Hello, you're listening to the debut of the Freefall Audio Podcast. I'm Rahul Ranganath here with Dhruv Jindal, the founder of Freefall Audio. To kick things off, we're pulling back the curtain on Malleant, his latest project designed to empower the game audio community. So before we get started, Dhruv, would you like to talk about yourself for a bit?
Yeah. Hey, everyone. I'm Dhruv. I founded Freefall Audio with a friend of mine about 2.5, 3 years ago. We started off as a game audio service providing company. So we're still doing that. We're still a team of about 8 people, and we work with video game companies and developers to provide audio services. But about a year and a half ago, we sort of wanted to venture into software development for the game audio community, and that's how Freefall Interfaces came to be, and now Malleant. So here we are.
Okay, awesome. So this podcast is special. It's the first debut podcast, obviously, and we're also talking about Malleant, which is your first venture into this sphere where you're creating tools for game audio professionals. So just to sort of unveil it a little bit, let's talk about what Malleant actually is.
hmm Yeah, and that's a good question to start off with. So Malleant is a standalone software. It's a standalone piece of software. It's not a plugin. It's not sort of something that's dependent on other pieces of software. It's a standalone audio tool, right? And along with its standalone nature, it also works with other pieces of game development software, specifically audio. So Unity and Unreal in the future. Right now, Wwise natively, and it also works with your local files. That's for what it is physically, and for what it is empirically. It's a game audio tool that helps you kind of skip the redundant nature of revisiting your DAWs once you're kind of in the game audio implementation phase, just to use your VSTs or edit the tone of your audio sound effects or any kind of other assets.
Okay. Okay. Awesome. So my understanding of it is essentially where like a an interface where you're able to use third-party VSTs
hmm
to process audio files that you've already got running in your game engine via a middleware solution like Wwise, for example. So if you have Wwise running and you have Unity running, I get to pull those files out, process them with any VST that I've got, which is really cool. I'm waiting to get my hands on this, and boom, put that back into Wwise and have the game running, or also even demo it in real time while the game is running. Right. Okay. Cool. Awesome.
Yep.
Um, Now, when you first talked to me about this, I was fascinated by the concept, but I'm so cued into certain game audio workflows that it's difficult for me to really wrap my head around why you chose to do this, because it's quite an undertaking to go ahead and make this. You've been working on this for quite a long time, per my understanding. So, what was like the specific gap? What is the specific frustration that you saw in the current game audio workflow that made you realize that this tool had to be built? And was there like a specific light bulb moment or a specific project that led you to that realization?
Yeah. So the initial idea or like the light bulb moment came from a project that we were working on as a team. The project was called BTX. It's a mobile game, and it's a third-person multiplayer shooter meant for mobile phones. And since it was developed in India, it's targeted towards an Indian market. And in India, we have a very large variety of mobile phones, ranging from basically a brick to basically a supercomputer. That's a bit of an overstatement, but yeah. And while we were in the audio development process for this game, the developers came to us and said, "Hey, Dhruv, we need this game to run on the worst phone that you can find, the worst phone with a screen. So you have zero budget for processing when it comes to your audio side, because we need all of that for server side operations." And that was when I realized, I was like, well, to provide quality to this project, I'm doing a lot of these like in engine mixing or in engine adding effects in Fmod, things like distortion, saturation on the different types of guns to kind of bring them that cut through the mix and stuff, right? And I realized when I took a deeper look at the project that a lot of the events had these non-dynamic effects included in them, just so I could give a better quality sound, what the developers are expecting. And that's where most of the processing budget was going. And to solve that, what we are able to do today is, well, go back to the DAW. At the time, we were using Pro Tools. I know, not Reaper, so it was a bit harder. But we went back to Pro Tools and we found all the assets, and there were hundreds of it because different guns, right? Hundreds of assets, hundreds of different layers in terms of like the variations, and then we had to process them individually. Bake these effects into the assets themselves, just so they would sound good and run in the game without a hitch. And that's when it sort of occurred to me that this is a very simple process. As a sound engineer, it's very frustrating for me to spend most of my time during the week tackling something that's not even related so much as to speak with sound design. I'm not here creating things. I'm just manually adjusting and exporting and re-importing. And so I thought, this is a process that can be automated, and I would love it. So I took this idea and I showed it to a couple of my friends or people I've met across during my time at different exhibitions, and really good game audio directors that I personally like look up to, right? Um, and I pitched them this idea. I was like, hey, in an ideal world, if you had a tool like this, which would perform, which would allow you to add effects in such a manner and not have to worry about processing or optimization problems, would you like it? Would you be happy with it? And I was happy to get a really good response. And so we started on this journey about a year and a half year ago, where we started development. And since then, it's been a wild ride.
Okay. Okay. Cool. So, as per my understanding, and we've talked about this before,
Yeah.
so I have a little bit of an insight into this, is that you had basically events in game that were being processed in real time. Like, let's say you had a chorus or a delay or something like that on a specific event, but it was static. It wasn't changing through
Yep.
any like gameplay related data. It wasn't like the player's speed influenced anything or orientation or whatever, what have you. So you didn't really see a need to do this in real time. There was no reason to to offload that stuff onto the CPU. You could just bake it and record, have that asset playing.
Mm-hmm.
And Malleant essentially lets you do that. It's like, we just take this file, we add some effects to it, throw it back into the middleware session, we're good to go, which is something we could not do in middleware at the time.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's even on the roadmap, but it's not something we can do.
Yeah.
So that's okay. So I get it. So we're basically offloading a lot of stuff from CPU to just
Yeah. And I feel like it kind of gets derived from the way that I look at audio from from my sound design perspective, where whenever I look at audio in game, I divide it up into like two different aspects. One is like the tone of the sound, and the
Mhm.
other is the function in the mix. So the tone of the sound is what I'm really getting at, the
Sure.
non-dynamic part of it, which is that these effects I was putting in were directly impacting how the sounds at its core. How the SFX or the dialogue, it what is the nature of it. And then there's the flip side, which is the in-game functionality or the mix functionality, which are the dynamic effects. And these need to be dynamic. These need to be controlled over time, that allow your game to have different functions, allow you to immerse the player using like either attenuation or having it in different places or something. So with Malleant, we're only focusing on those non-dynamic aspects.
Sure.
Yeah.
Tone shaping essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah, as opposed to anything else. But also it's not limited to that. You can get very creative with Malleant processing
Yeah.
as well,
Yeah.
because you have
Of course.
access to essentially your entire VST library of plugins,
Yeah.
and you can chain them up in crazy ways and do all that stuff. So okay. So so you've mentioned that, of course, this is for game audio professionals.
Mhm.
Is there any specific feature or capability that you think is going to be kind of a game changer, or something that you just want to highlight that you think is cool?
So I mean, it's kind of like the primary use case of Malleant, or what really makes it that much of a um, usable tool, in my opinion, which is in context. The words in context. It's the ability to you know use your VSTs and listen back to how they're sounding in context of your game. because Malleant's able to connect to Wwise live, right? And it's able to give you the live audio buffers. And you can connect your Wwise session to your Unity session live. So in process, what happens is when your Unity game is running or when you're playtesting the game calls the events from its sound banks, from the device sound banks, and you can dynamically add your plugins in Malleant and playtest them live. And amongst all other things, that is something that really like is something new when it comes to utilizing VSTs. Of course, you can use effects in Wwise in the same manner, but
Hmm.
not your VSTs. And I
Sure.
don't see it coming anytime soon unless there's like specific integrations by the VST supplier with audio,
Sure.
So yeah,
And even those effects that you're using, you can't bake them. So
yeah,
you can't really offload that processing.
exactly.
Um, Interesting. So how I would typically have approached this problem, and I'm thinking about is like, there's Reaper to Wise, and then you have these
Mhm.
third-party scripts that let you basically post events to Wise to video. It's such a long process to do that, especially if you're working on a project. But it's amazing that you can do it. I can essentially like design my sounds to a specific linear footage and post all those events to Wise, make sure it's working well. But over here, what you're saying is essentially I could have my editor running, have Vice running, have Malleant running, play the game in my editor, and then as events are being called from Wise, I can process those events with a bunch of VSTs, hear how those sound, and then if I decide, okay, I like this, I can commit to that, and then it just renders them back into Wise, and it also like versions it. So you get the old version if you want to switch back, you get the new version if you want to go to it, which is
Exactly.
really cool, really really cool. Um, okay, awesome. That sounds fantastic. You're
Great.
and you're going into like a beta soon,
Yeah.
right?
So
Yeah.
beta launches on the 15th of January, 2026.
Okay.
And it's open to all. It's free. It'll probably run for about 3 months or so. That's what we're planning. And yeah, we'd love to hear everyone's comments and, how we've already, pre-beta, we've already run a couple of like one-on-one sessions with a lot of people, kind of showing them Malleant and showing the workflow that we're envisioning and taking their feedback. And we've gotten a lot of good constructive criticism. And that has lend itself to like us adding more features and more things to make Malleant more comprehensive. So yeah, beta. I would just want everyone to sign up, everyone to use it.
Yeah.
Twink
So
around.
in a way, this is a very community driven
Oh yeah.
development cycle as well. You're getting a lot of feedback from people even before you launch and making changes to it. And I'm assuming going forward, that's also going to be the ethos of how
Hmm.
you operate is you want to see how people are using this and sort of target those pain points first before you start adding, I just want to add this because it's cool
Yeah.
kind
Yeah.
of.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, sure. Okay.
Yeah. Because some of it comes from the fact that we have to be cognizant, at least in Freefall interface, that even though we are sound engineers, we're not the most experienced sound engineers. We're not the most experienced game audio designers. And to take just my opinion and to put that into a project and then tell everyone, hey, this is the right way to use something, I don't think that's a fair approach. Even when it comes to the sellability of Malleant, even when
Sure.
it's just that. So I and I'm grateful that the game audio community is in such a way that it gives me that feedback. The people are more than happy to share, their pain points. The more people are more than happy to contribute and be an active part of this community. And that's what's really driving Malleant.
Yeah, game audio folks are the nicest. They're
Yeah.
always so forthcoming. Um, that's it's interesting you say that. Yeah, of course, experience is one thing. The other thing I feel is also everybody has a different approach based on the project they're working on, based on the type of game. Your example that you cited that even birthed this idea was a mobile game. So it was very specific to optimization, but now that's led you to creating something that you could use for that technically, but you could also use just as a creative tool. Um, so, and everybody's going to be using it differently depending
Yeah.
on their project. So I think that's a nice segue to the next question I was going to ask you is we've talked about this from an individual perspective. So if I'm using Malleant, you're using Malleant, we can talk about how we're tackling it. But what about a whole team? How does it integrate into a team's pipeline?
Yeah. Got it. So this is a bit of combined question, in my opinion, because it has various parts to it, and I'll attack them one after the other. So one of it is what benefit does it provide to a team? Before we delve into how does it fit into a team focused workflow. So the first benefit, and really the core benefit that it provides in a team, is the democratization of VSTs, of plugins. Earlier on, maybe maybe a decade ago, you'd have studios very sort of strict about what plugins, what softwares their team is using, just because they want synchronization across the board. But we've gotten more and more AA studios coming in, more and more individual freelancers coming in, more and more of the audio pipeline getting offset to different. So it's very hard for studios to control this. What softwares should my developers be using, what VSTs, and everyone has their own style. Everyone, you might use Massive over Serum, and I might use something else. I might use I mean, I guess you don't use Massive, you use the
I
kilohertz
mean,
one.
I know I do use from time to time.
Yeah.
Massive has been used. It's great, but yeah, Faceplant also
Yeah.
is just kind of what I'm on right now. Yeah,
So how do why put a limit on the creative mindset of every designer as well? That from a point of view of a company doesn't make sense. And Malleant kind of helps in that. Not that it allows you to do synthesis, but the fact
sure,
that the VST code is not being shipped with the game. It's not being uploaded onto your version control, right? It's only the audio files, only the audio assets. That's the outcome from Malleant. And since Malleant's allowing you to do all the baking, all the management, everything very seamlessly, at least in my opinion, it allows your team members to have different plugins. It allows your team members to have different softwares that they use, their own individual identity. The democratization. I keep using the word because I heard it from someone in one of these conversations. And it really stuck out to me that they thought about it like this. So that is a big benefit for a team situation, that each individual person can have their own VSTs without concerns when it comes to the game engine. And then we look at how does Malleant integrate with a team setting? What makes it so that it doesn't cause problems? Because the one thing that you're really looking out for when you're a team of 5+ people, it's, if I introduce something new, does that break my existing structure? Does that break my existing team force? Will I have a downtime for people in my team to kind of get used to this new solution?
sure,
Is that worth it? Because I'm working on so many important things and investing time in this tool, is it worth it? So in that regard, we recognize the areas where Malleant can be a problem, and we've really tried to you know make sure that it's seamless. In I'll tell you in what ways. Since we don't ship any code, so it's non-disruptive in terms of the version controls and what type of code you're putting across your team, and it's file formats they're already used to. So audio formats, WAV files, OGG files. If you're insane, then MP3 files. Then so it's on the same format that everyone's used to. That's number one. Number two, one of the pitfalls we know that Malleant can introduce is the injection of a large number of variations. Because you're able to quickly export out hundreds of files, in a sequence, we want to make sure that it's organized. So that's why the export panel, if you see in my different videos, and I can pull it up right now as well as we speak, it's um, it's quite encompassing. It's not just exporting out to one folder like we are used to in most of the creative workflows, where you have a bunch of files and it exports to one folder. It looks at where the files are coming from, right? And it exports them systematically to the folder that they belong to, so that you don't disrupt your file management, your file tree organization.
sure,
Plus, Malleant comes with a slew of renaming features to make sure that rename becomes consistent, right? Um, then at the same time, when Malleant re-imports assets into Wwise, it makes sure to add it as a new external source, right? Not external source, as a new source. Sorry,
sure.
right? Which makes it so that you can easily go back. Now, some of the things we will be solving in the near future is having a mini version control from our own end. So that means if you were the designer and I was the game audio director, I would be able to see on my game audio director panel in the enterprise version of the software, um, what you have done using Malleant today or yesterday. Which files have you affected?
Mm-hmm.
Which uh, where what has been the sort of outcome from your usage in Malleant. I will be able to see that, and I will be able to kind of use that as my basis for communication.
Okay.
So we've covered, integrating into the file structure. We've covered consistency in naming. We've covered like um, making sure that there's information about activity driven information from peers in a team. And some of the other things we will be looking at is, you know, when you're shipping the project, you need to clean it, right? Because of all these new assets. So we might provide an ancillary tool just that allows you to see all the unused sources, all the all of the, well, the collateral or
Sure.
the baggage that Malint has
Yeah.
left.
Yeah. Like in Fmod, I'm constantly adding like tons of files when I'm using it, and it always like sort of tags them if they used an event or not. It'll let you know this
Yeah.
has been used, this has been modified. So I'm assuming some kind of similar system where it'll just show you these are files that you have in your session, but they're not really being used by your project. So, or what version it is, and some kind of tagging system like that, I suppose.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. There's something I want to circle back to. All of
Yeah.
this is great, and of course, for me, um, like I understand the importance of just proper file management and structure and all of that stuff, especially when you're working with a team. And anybody who is shifted from working as an individual freelancer to working with a team, they quickly realize that if you don't have all of that set up properly, you run into a lot of issues later because somewhere somebody wants to find something, they want to modify something, and it's like, oh, I don't know, I don't remember, and all of that stuff happens. So in teams, of course, everybody has their own system of organizing folders and naming conventions and etc. All of that stuff, which is so important, and often overlooked by many people who are sort of new to this. And I think one thing I want to circle back to is the VST aspect of it, which I
Mhm.
think is the new thing here that you're
Yeah.
introducing. Yes, we have systems, I believe, for everything else. We have systems for batch processing and naming, and everybody's going to do things in their own ways, and they have DAWs that can handle that as well, and of course, umpteen Reaper scripts that do all
Mhm.
of this for you as well, along with like UCS integration for certain asset names and what have you. So while all that is cool, I just want to go back to the VST thing
Mhm.
for a minute because something you said sort of struck a chord with me. I was like, okay, if I can use whatever I want and somebody else can use whatever VSTs they want, we're sort of extracting files from your Wwise session, processing them, putting them back in. What if in a team, somebody else wants to use my Malleant session?
Mm.
They don't have my plugins. What happens then? Because what I'm hearing now is, of course, yeah, I can use my VSTs to process files that are in Wwise. I don't need to open my DAW. So if somebody else has rendered some files out, put it into Wwise, I can access that stuff via Malleant and process them without having to get their DAW session. But at the same time, the question arises: what if we want to trade Malleant sessions?
Mhm.
Then it's sort of like moving that problem down a step to DAW to Malleant, right? So they still need the same VSTs I used in that session, etc. So is that something you've thought about? Is that not really even part of the way Malleant is meant to be used?
So there's a couple of differences when it comes to Malleant. We don't have sessions, so we do have backups just in case anything crashes. So you can go back to your whatever you had. We do have
Mhm.
backups, but we don't have sessions. So when you open Malleant up, it's not creating a file. It's not creating like, hey, this was your session. Go back to it. At least we don't do now, unless we have like a really large amount of people requesting this.
Mhm.
But what we do is allow you to do templates, allow you to do presets, and share those across the board, right? The core problem of what you had said, if you're sharing something to me and I want to open it and I don't have the VST, will it work? It won't. You need the VST, like that. It you do need it. When I talked about democratization, it was more also from the perspective of the fact that we're targeting, or we want to have professionals use this is because the word professional is somewhat synonymous. I won't say completely, but somewhat synonymous with trust. Uh, so I have, as person in your team or being in the same team, I need to trust your audio output, not per se what maybe 1 or 2 dBs of what processing you're putting on it. Where, I mean, at least that's my opinion on it. Like if you were setting up a chain, I would personally not invade the chain and then change things, but I would rather just give my comments about like maybe this thing stands out to me, or if I have to look at a session, I would talk with you, look at your session, and just run with that. Um, so again, we haven't really this particular thing. I would say we've not thought of it as a big issue, but in when it comes to feedback from the beta stage, if we feel like a lot of people have been requesting this and people feel like this is where they want expanded functionality, then we'll implement it because we
Okay.
can.
Okay. Cool. Awesome. Almost like a I'm thinking almost like a suite of like default tools,
Yes.
default plugins that
Mm.
come with Malleant. So you just have that at least. Or again, it depends so much on how this is used. But again, you set out to solve a very specific problem that has been solved,
Yeah.
and now we're talking about okay, what else can we do with this?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So on that note, what's the? Of course, you have the beta lined up next.
Mhm.
What's the future of Malleant after that?
Got it. So we've got beta lined up for what we're estimating a 3-month long beta process. And then hopefully around the time in April, we want to launch it commercially. So we want to have a stable commercial launch version where people can integrate it. Um, and we'll have different sort of license types. So right now we're currently planning 3 different types of licenses: education, standard, and enterprise, with some additional features in enterprise when it concerns teams that normally we don't face as individuals, like these version control things. And yeah, and one thing I'm happy to tell everyone is that it's a one-time purchase. It's going to be one-time purchase, no subscription.
That was going to be my next question.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
Do I
going to
need to
be.
subscribe? Yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
one-time purchase. You buy it, you own it forever, and you. Hopefully, we get some capital raised based on that, and we can keep providing updates, regular updates. There's a lot on our table that we want to do, and that includes things like integrations, like I talked about. We currently natively integrate with Wwise, but we will definitely natively integrate with Unreal and Purpose.
Mhm.
So those are definites that are going to come up. Beyond that, we're more than happy to look at possibilities for integration, where what APIs can we use, because we want to make Malleant a community focused tool. It's not a use me over the other kind of situation. You know.
Sure. Sure. It's like it's just another tool in your kit,
Yeah.
right? We're not trying to replace anything here with this. And I think so with so much of audio that often is the case, we all have so many different plugins that do the same thing.
Yeah.
Nothing's replacing anything else. I just want a little bit of a different flavor. Of course, this is a lot more than that, but yeah, I don't think any audio people see any tool as a replacement unless it's a huge leap
Yeah.
in technology, which happens I think only once a decade or something like that. But having said that, let's talk about pricing for a minute.
Mhm.
Um, so one thing I've noticed a lot over the past several years is many software providers, plugin providers, they've been experimenting with different types of pricing models. And since we are from India and the global south, there is like an economic disparity between affordability and all of that. This is just a fact of the matter, right? So a lot of things that have become more accessible over the years is subscriptions, at least like non predatory ones where they are just kilohertz, for example. The subscription is great, it's fantastic, it's very very affordable, and it gives you all of their tools. And if you're a working professional, it's very easy to afford that on a day-to-day basis, and the return is almost immediate. Like you can a day's work is essentially, in
Yeah.
India it
Yeah.
pays you for the whole subscription for the month. So similarly, like you have other things like Oak Sound Soothe is available on subscription now. And of course, there are some DAWs themselves. I don't want to go talk
Yep.
any specifics, but they are available. Reaper is incredibly affordable and is sort of the seems to be a standard in game audio. Um, and also regional pricing with games. Since we work in the gaming world, Steam as a platform is so successful because of regional pricing. I think is one of the biggest aspects of it. So, in from that perspective, how are you looking at pricing for different regions in the world, because that's a huge thing to tackle.
Got it. So I agree with you in that subscription, makes any piece of software or any product more accessible to a larger amount, like larger audience. But for Malleant, we have some slight other considerations. So key point being, we're targeting people, or we see the people that are being going to be our users as industry professionals.
Hmm.
The slight differences that come with that is, like, let's say if you're getting a plugin or a DAW or a suite of plugins like Kilohertz, for instance, they are mostly looking at people, you know, maybe a large market share of theirs is within the or music production community, where you have a lot of individuals,
Sure.
where you have people like getting into the industry who are wanting to make money out of it and then can, like, juggle this simultaneously. We are from the thought process of, like, hey, when you do require Malleant, like the stage of your career when you're going to start requiring Malleant, you're at that point, you're working on projects, like you're working with the game engine, you're working in the industry. And when we surveyed a bunch of people in that stage of their life, we got the fact that, hey, I don't want subscriptions. I can afford
Mm.
to shell out like at once, and then I just want to own it. I don't want to have the headache of, like, keep buying it. That being said, we will offer like substantial discounts when it comes to like students education, when it comes to the standard version, which we will price it on a lower grade from the enterprise one, and not with a highly reduced functionality by any means,
Hmm.
right? But just more suited to the sole person. And um, as a startup, it's also important for us to do this one-time thing, in terms of our like balance sheet. But
Right.
I mean, subscriptions, that's something to consider in the future. But I really think that the response we've gotten from the one-time purchase model has been really great. Like, everyone's like just released a sigh of relief, just saying, okay, it's one time. I don't have to
Sure.
pay per project. I don't have to pay per, like, what you have to do in most enterprise licenses. If you've got a project, you have to license it for the project, then on the per seat. We don't do all of that. You just
Hmm.
buy it per seat. You can use it on any number of projects. You can use it on, like, it's yours. You know.
Right. Right. I mean, it's essentially almost operating like a plugin wrapper, which is in and of itself a plugin. Yeah, it's cool. It's cool. I see that. Yeah, I think my question was more like geared towards overall pricing, not specifically subscription, but how do you tackle democratizing it, so to
Mm.
speak, to both the South and like other like Western countries where maybe like a $10 fee for a software is not that big a deal, but in the global South it might be like a little. They might think about it a little bit more. Like I think Oak Sound is a great example. As Sooth comes up a lot. Even in the West, it's considered a very expensive plugin for an individual to purchase. But people still get it because it's so good. And of course, they've understood that and they've given a subscription model. But it's not the only model. There are many different models
Yep.
available. And of course, Reaper is a great example. I don't think everybody has the luxury to do what Reaper did, considering their history with Winamp and this is so it started with a massive capital. They don't really need to worry about cash flow. So they did do a very, very affordable license for an incredible piece of software. And of course, yeah, unlimited usage. You can just download and use it for free, essentially. It's not free,
Yeah.
but you can use it for free, essentially, for a long time. So from that perspective, it's good to know that you're communicating with the with actual users, with the community, getting that feedback and sort of figuring out what's the best way to make sure everybody gets it. And of course, at the end of the day, you're running a business. So,
Yeah.
also make sure that your
Yeah.
all the work that has gone into this is is paying off in more ways than one.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great to hear. Mm, okay, so I think we're at the end of the podcast. I
Mm.
think we have covered everything that we needed to. If there's anything else that you want to throw in there, closing thoughts, closing remarks.
So I would say, again, I don't think my marketing team would be happy with this, but sometimes it's nice to talk about the limitations of Malleant. Uh, because again, I don't want to give anyone the impression that this is an end all be all tool. You know, we can't promise this ever. Um, so and to say that it will work with every workflow is a lie, right? We want to make sure it works with most of them, or it makes sense to most people, wherein they would be incentivized to adapt to it. Uh, but there are certain things where we as the developers would say, okay, you know what? These are some things that Malleant doesn't provide, where traditional things come into play. Like, for instance, Malleant at its current stage does not provide layer-based control. So sometimes when you want to change the tone of a sound of an SFX, you are looking at changing the individual layers that the SFX is made up of. And that's the job of a DAW. And we can never replace that. Like, at least that's not what we are trying to do. We're not trying to replace the DAW. We're not trying to replace that part. And that is one thing to take note of, where you're thinking, okay, then where does that workflow go? Right? So Malleant is just about, being fast, being efficient, and being sort of free, so to speak. Uh, that's one. Then the other thing is, I mean, actually, that's kind of the main thing.
Yeah.
That's kind of the main thing. The layer-based thing, which is like you can't do that. And also, Malleant is not a real-time tool. That means no automation as of now.
Mm, mm,
We can look at in the near future about like adding automation, like small bits of automation, and then imprinting them into the assets, bouncing them into the assets. Definitely something possible. But when it comes to let me have this VST always running with my game and send it to my peers and then modify it over time and mix the game over time dynamically, that's not what Malleant is set out to do.
sure.
Because that use case, it needs to be resolved by the middleware or
Mhm,
or or Unreal Metasounds for that matter. That is a control you need to ship with the game. So whatever you need to ship with the game, if there's a piece of code that you need to ship with the game, that is not something that Malleant is really looking at.
mhm.
Everything you don't need to ship with the game, the code, the audio files we ship, the code we don't, so that we don't have any licensing problems. No, no DMCA claims, no like, hey, pay up, like you shipped our code type
Right,
thing.
right.
So steer clear of the code stuff, and yeah, Malleant is what it is in our understanding today, and it will evolve over time. But there are always going to be some limitations.
Yeah, I mean, the automation thing, for one, I remember talking to you about this the last time we had a conversation about Malleant. And one of the things that occurred to me right now is you also could add things like LFOs or just envelope followers and stuff like that. So we're getting audio data from the file and then we're using that to drive certain parameters on the VSTs. So you're not doing like traditional timeline based automation,
Yeah,
but you are able to add a few more extra like
yeah,
tidbits of like movement to the sound as it's being rendered out with some randomization as well, which again it is something that you have as a feature in DAWs as well. But
yeah,
bringing that to Malleant would sort of be the in between of we can do a timeline based automation, but also we can
yeah,
just do this, like throw in an LFO and
yeah.
have your delay squiggle around or something to that, you know.
Yeah, and what you talk
Yeah.
about is actually one of the core philosophies of Malleant, which is the non-linear, or what we like to call the asset-based workflow.
Mm-hmm.
It's our mindset, my mindset as a sound designer, when I'm working in game audio, it's a file-based mindset. It's a like an event-based mindset. It's a variation-based mindset. It's not a mindset of a linear-based tool. And
Sure.
we've taken steps to ensure that you remain in that asset-based mindset throughout the use case of Malleant, regardless of if you're using it from Wwise or Unreal or local files. Because with local files, you can audition like how you would in a game, right? You
Mm-hmm.
can You can set up your play modes, and you can say, hey, this folder should play at random, this folder should play at sequence, and this should play all at once, all the layers inside, and it will do that for you. So our core philosophy is that Malleant should enable a better asset-based workflow and not take you to a linear-based workflow where you're juggling between these two methods of operation.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. Awesome. I think we've covered everything. This has been fantastic.
Great.
And I'm looking forward to doing a lot more of these with you.
Yes, same.
Awesome. And that's it. And for everyone who tuned in, who listened to this, thanks for listening. You can check out the show notes for chapters and links and all of that stuff. And Dhruv, I'm assuming we're going to have some kind of live demonstration of Malleant coming up soon as well.
Yeah,
so listeners can stay tuned for that at whatever the outlets are going to be for it, YouTube, Spotify, etc.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm gonna push out more videos, explaining each and individual parts and the holistic ones. And when you sign up for the beta, you will get access to a bunch of tutorials as well that I will record for each individual aspect, because I know how irritating and how annoying it is to have a piece of software where you just don't know what is going on. So I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna make sure I can communicate as much as I can. And again, to reiterate, anyone who's watching, if you guys sign up for the beta, you can book a meeting one-on-one as well anytime, and let me introduce it myself. Any doubts, clarify any doubts myself. Kind of sell it to you, but but also if you're gonna put some money, if you're gonna put some money in it, I'm gonna put where my mouth is.
Right. Absolutely. Awesome. So links in the description. Thanks for watching, and we will catch you next time.